Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is in reference to what the Afghan Taliban regime have decided with regards to access to education for women. And one of the last avenues for this education that included midwifery and nursing courses is something that was perhaps the only way for women to receive any kind of education in Afghanistan. And that also has been banned and stopped from getting towards any sort of progress from the Afghan Taliban regime with regards to an informal decision and a directive being given out and to be strictly complied with. And this is, of course, very, very unfortunate given the dire consequence that this has, of course, on female education and female rights, but also in terms of the impact that it creates on the health and economy of the country. We've seen that, according to UN reports, there are numerous ways in which this will have disastrous impacts on the health of people, including women, of course, in Afghanistan. And a number of more than 18,000 midwives was something that was quoted by the UN as being required in Afghanistan to manage the health crisis that is already part of the country. So we're going to be taking a look at what this decision means, particularly in terms of its impact on Afghanistan, and then also with regards to the decisions taken by the Afghan Taliban regime and where they're headed, given the fact that reassurances otherwise were given previously by the Afghan Taliban regime, and the country seems to be heading in the opposite direction. Well, that is going to be our focus in the first segment of the show today. Our next one is going to take a look at what is going on in the world of sports with reference to the discussions that have reached another deadlock with the PCB and the BCCI. And we've seen that a partnership formula was given by the PCB with reference to Champions Trophy and other ICC related events that could be held on neutral grounds, for which we haven't seen a response coming in from the Indian side. And a meeting that was also supposed to be held in Dubai was cancelled with no response coming in from the Indian side. And that is, of course, concerning with reference to the kind of position that Pakistan has been taking and the kind of position that perhaps international events as part of the ICC need to take as well. So it remains to be seen what is going to be the future of this deadlock, and particularly, of course, in terms of moving forward in terms of politics and moving away from politicizing sports. Perhaps that is a way that we can move forward in the right direction. Whether or not that is going to be the case, because, of course, it involves two parties, is something that remains to be seen. But we'll talk about that more in the second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal. And we've also been joined online by Major General retired Mr. Zahid, Mahmood, who's a defense analyst, and Najib, Azad, author and faculty at the University of Wisconsin, USA. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of the show today and joining us in the debate. General Zahid Saab, I'm going to start with you with reference to an assessment of the situation on ground in Afghanistan. We've seen, of course, that a lot of deteriorating steps have been taken by the Afghan Taliban regime in the last couple of years, and we've seen that they've moved away a lot from the kind of assurances that were given in the past. But many also argue that this was something inevitable, and eventually, of course, we've seen previously also such step being taken, and that was perhaps expected. And I want your take on that, and in terms of how you see the Afghan Taliban regime today from how they were perhaps a year ago when the US troop withdrawal happened.
Thank you very much, Sana. I think it's very unfortunate, especially unfortunate for the people of Afghanistan, that they're being ruled by a government, by the people who don't have respect for any humanity, to be very honest. This is the byproduct of a war, and that's why the war is the main lead policy element, which is figuring out in every aspect of life. I would call it a gender apartheid regime. I can say that the way the women of Afghanistan by this regime, they are being stripped of their dignity, their honor, and I would say even their existence as a human being. So especially their ministry, which has come up with these new laws, and with every passing day, they keep coming out with the new laws, which is suppressing all in Afghanistan in general, and particularly the women of Afghanistan. Now, with this new laws, morality laws from their ministry, stopping the women from education, they have to cover the face. Of course, there are some Islamic teachings also on this, but to be very honest, this is the misinterpretation of that Islamic application of laws. So especially I'm perturbed because of this education, because over probably, if I'm not wrong, 11 years, you can't go to school, to the universities. So they're not empowering women. They're not giving them their right. Okay. So these women, once they'll become mothers. So what kind of children they will produce? They'll not be matching to the requirements of the 21st century. So Afghanistan, as I always maintained in your shows as well, I always maintained the biggest enemy of the Afghan people are the present regime. It is regrettable and this is condemnable. And probably the international community. Now, it is not that every international policy towards Afghanistan should be stemming out from our security, our war needs. We have to see what is happening in Afghanistan from social, moral, and political aspects also. And Pakistan being their neighbors, we are highly impacted whatever is happening in Afghanistan, especially in the present environment. So it is regrettable, and I think we must raise our voice as much as possible. We must approach the international community, and we should talk about this regime. We were expecting that they must have learned from the past, and especially their promises in Doha.
Right. That is, of course, yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
We were expecting that they'll bring some order in Afghanistan. But as I said, this is the byproduct of the war. So gun is always, and violation of the human rights has always been their prime aspect in their policy, which is regrettable. And we really condemn whatever is happening to the women of Afghanistan.
Absolutely. And Mr. Najib, I'd like your perspective on that as well, because while we can, of course, condemn it, and we can condemn it anywhere in the world, there is the aspect of what's going on in one particular country. And of course, this is not a sovereign government as we understand it, but in terms of an actual ability or power for anybody to have any impact or influence, what really can be said about what the Afghan Taliban regime is doing and the kind of steps that they're taking? If we condemn it, what does that mean in terms of actual impact that it creates? And if there's no impact, then what's the way forward for any betterment or change for the country?
Thank you so very much. A very simple question which needs a very detailed and rooted answers. What the Taliban have been doing in the last 3 years has not shocked or surprised me personally. This was foreseen. This was expected. Condemnation, which is a very, like a very simple term to use for what or to do for what the Taliban regime is doing. It's an ideology. It's not a particular class of people or a group who would do this today and who may not do that the next day. They did that 20 years ago in their first era, and they have been doing this now, and they will do that forever if they're in power. The reason they are doing this for the last couple of decades, they have been constantly brainwashed, injected a particular ideology. And I'm pretty sure General Saab, he knows much better in this case. They have been trained, brainwashed in Pakistani madrasas. Even the mullahs, the Taliban that you have in Pakistan have the same ideology. The reason they cannot do what the Afghan Taliban are doing in Afghanistan, they have been completely controlled by the Pakistani army. They cannot do that, what the Afghan Taliban do. We still remember when couple years ago, maybe about 2 decades ago, when the Pakistani mullahs were in power of key PKs today, Maulana Fazl Rahman's party, they were as strict as these Taliban were, and they were against many things that comes under the human rights. So to get out of this, what we have been experiencing, unfortunately, what the world has been experiencing, unfortunately, we need to stop injecting, we need to stop training, we need to stop brainwashing people like Taliban. This ideology has been constantly amplified, and that's not something I claim or I blame. It is something that the Pakistani renowned authors, including Ahmad Rashid, including Hussain Haqqani, some generals, retired generals, even the Pakistani former interior minister, Sheikh Rashid of the PTI government, before the Taliban took over, in an exclusive interview with Geo News, he said that the Taliban were changed and the Taliban are the Pakistani heroes. So this support, this backed really made the entire scenario to this point. Unfortunately, maybe there are. Yeah.
Right, absolutely, and that's an important point to discuss further as well. And Faisal, I want your perspective on that, given, of course, that when we talk about what Pakistan government can do and what Pakistan involvement in the overall regional peace is, it's important, of course, to understand the dynamics that we have and the dynamics that, of course, we have within the country and then with Afghanistan and the Taliban regime as well. And we've talked about how there have been decisions taken by political leadership and the elite in the past, which, of course, have harmed the country and their interests. But again, that brings us down to accountability and action. But of course, I want to also focus a lot on what the Afghan Taliban regime is doing. But since we've started talking about what perspective or dynamic that Pakistan brings to the equation, I want your perspective on how we've actually dealt with the situation in the past and how we're dealing with now and what's the right way forward.
Yes, Sana, obviously Pakistan is doing a brilliant job, especially its security forces and intelligence services. They are doing a brilliant job when it comes to, of course, imposing the constitution of Pakistan, which allows women to study, which allows women to have the same rights as men. And when it comes to, of course, writ of the government, that is being imposed by Pakistan, and that's how it should be. The kind of bad influence which always comes from across the border when it comes to, of course, women's education, women's rights, that influence is being countered by Pakistan. Overall, I would always say, as General Zahid rightly pointed out, that in Doha Accord, it was pledged by the Taliban themselves that when they take the power, of course, they will be, going ahead with the women's education and women's rights and, safeguarding rest of the borders so that their land is not being used for terrorism or cross-border terrorism. But still, everything is there where it was previously. Sana, here I wanted to share an example from yesterday. I was sitting at one of the coffee shops in Islamabad. Right next to me on the next table there were two girls. They were sisters to each other. Both of them, they were Afghan girls, and they came from America. They started talking to me when they came to know that I was, I have a show to appear and I appear on the PTV World. Then they started talking about education factor of Afghanistan. And you know why they came here in Pakistan? The elder one, she was though born in Afghanistan, but she was very little when she was brought into Pakistan as a, of course, migrant child. And then the other, her younger sister, she was actually born in Peshawar. And why they came to Peshawar and then they came to Islamabad? Because they wanted to connect themselves with their past, because they lived in Islamabad, because they lived in Peshawar. And now both of them, they are from Colorado, and both of them, in their relevant fields, they are outshining everyone. Why I'm mentioning them here? Because the elder one, while I was talking to her, she said to me that where is it written that women are not allowed to study, women are not allowed to do business? She gave the example of Hazrat Khadija, Ummatul Muslimin. She gave example of Hazrat Khadija. She was a businesswoman and she was actively doing business. When it comes to Hazrat Aisha, she said, Hazrat Aisha portrayed as, of course, she was a teacher to many Sahabas. So this is the case here. She herself, when she gave these kind of examples, I was thinking to myself that Afghan women, Afghan kids, Afghan females, when they are given a chance to study, they can, of course, excel in every field of life. And these two girls, Marwa and Elaha, both of these girls coming all the way from US, they talking to me and they are an evidence themselves that they were given a chance to study. After studying, they are making a difference in their relevant societies. And that's how it should be. I know if all of the women from Afghanistan today, if they are given an equal right of studies, they will be making a difference. And I think this is where the understanding is missing when it comes to Taliban. They fail to understand that women should be having an equal right to, of course, contribute in the society. And this is where they need to understand it. I don't know what kind of, ideology they are pursuing. If they are pursuing, then what is a sort of antidote to it and how it can be used.
Sure, but I want to question, Farrukh, whether it's a matter of understanding or interpretation of religion, or it's a matter of power. And this, of course, is something that we have seen in the past. As we're saying, it's not surprising, it's something expected. But then this is what is in place in Afghanistan at the moment, and this is what you're dealing with. So is it really something that you have to make someone understand?
Right. Thank you very much, Sana. I think that the answer to your question lies in your question, right? It is about power, and it is about the ability to do whatever you want, and stubbornness. I think when it comes to ideology, Islamic teachings are clear. We have read them repeatedly, and all over the world they are exercised in different manner. So why is it that this reductionist view of the world is being enforced in Afghanistan? At that time, when Afghan Taliban were about to take over, at that time I was continuously reminding everybody that while it is certain that the US is going to withdraw, but beware of the consequences. You are looking at a hostage situation now. There's a regime which is holding their people hostage, and it does not need anything from abroad to survive or stay in power. So what exactly happens? They keep on enforcing this deductive worldview, and they keep on forcing women against their will to stay at home. I think that at that time, those days, Sana, if you remember, were really hard on me, because many of the girls that were at that time texting me as well, they were my students, exchange students in Pakistan, and they had gone back. So it was pure hell for me, not being able to help them when there was so much fear and panic at that time that Afghan Taliban are coming. Remember that this is the generation that was born and brought up during the time that actually was after Taliban's overthrow, right? So for them, their worst nightmare was being confirmed, and it is a nightmare that continues without any break. They keep on attacking, and they keep on suppressing women. The General Sahab was talking about the mindset of warriors or people who are part of warfare. The humble summation is that when you look at the power equation on both sides, Ashraf Ghani's government, the army at that time, and the Taliban's army, on neither side were women a part of the active fighting force. So it is the worst kind of power play or exhibition of power to attack people who are very, they are not likely to defend themselves. So this continues, and unfortunately, because the world has changed, now there is no buy-in into actually sending any kind of punitive measures. Remember that if there is any punitive measure, that will be Afghanistan sanctions, and what happens? It affects the common man on the street, and not the government itself. So in the end, because now Donald Trump is coming, and he was the one who first initiated the idea of withdrawing from Afghanistan. The biggest problem with the whole thing is that we can talk about the Doha agreement, but the way the takeover actually took place, Doha Accord cannot or may not seem to be enforceable. And because of that, and because of Donald Trump, remember, it is only America which has money, the forces, and the willpower to actually intervene. The rest of the countries either don't have forces or they don't have money. So with that kind of a situation, I'm afraid, because Taliban over the past 20 years, 25 years have shown that they are practically incapable of evolution. I really don't know how to actually offer any kind of solution. I think that it was a bad choice when Taliban were allowed to take over without any kind of restraint.
Right. General Zahid, I want your perspective also on this in terms of where we stand with the Afghan Taliban regime internationally, and of course to recognize the government as something for which a lot of these conditions that are of course not being met was put forward previously as well. But we have seen that both economically, health-wise, and where the situation is headed, we've seen the country deteriorating under this leadership at the end of the day, whether it's recognized or not. And so I want your perspective on what the international community, particularly the US, and now particularly under President Donald Trump, can actually bring forward to deal with this scenario.
Sana, to be very honest, that I don't foresee any positive approach coming from United States with Donald Trump, because Donald Trump was in office once this war was being ended. And as Pitafi Saab said, that they have left Afghanistan in quite a chaotic stage. Today, whatever Afghanistan is, this whole international community, including the United States of America, is responsible for this. I can understand, we being their neighbor, we are always under critique, international critique as well, and even the Afghanistanis for whom we have sacrificed the most. After Afghanistan, if biggest sufferer on God's earth was Pakistan. So we sacrificed the most, but we have not been recognized. People talk about madrasas and what all happened. These madrasas were, I mean, there's no ideology. Whatever Afghanistan, these Talibans are portraying or whatever they're showcasing has nothing to do with Islamic ideology. These are the Kharajites who are showcasing the bad ideology. So this is misinterpretation. It is not a case of interpretation. It is case of a misinterpretation of Islam, whatever is happening there. Pakistan also have a lot of madrasas here, but they're playing a very important role. I can tell you, there are many madrasas. Most of them are extremely progressive madrasas. There were these Talibans in the form of Mujahideens. They were even present in the White House. Once they were required, they were used. This is a story of betrayal with Afghanistan, story of betrayal with Pakistan from the West. Anyhow, now coming over to the recognition and the future of Afghanistan, we are the biggest victim of this regime. They are harboring the terrorists, they are supporting them, they are giving them logistics, and they are taking care of them. And then they are being used for the proxy war and the state-sponsored terrorism which is coming into Pakistan by India through Afghanistan. So this regime, in spite of all the efforts, diplomatic, political, even from our civil society, they are not understanding. That's why I always say that this regime is the biggest enemy of people of Afghanistan. I always caution my Pakistani brothers and sisters and Pakistan nation that in spite of this negative approach of Afghanistan, we should not savor terms with the people of Afghanistan, because they don't have any say in the government functioning, because this government has not come through any democratic process. So this is a nominated government. So people of Afghanistan and people of Pakistan both have to take care of such aspects, and we should not fall prey to these wrong perceptions and wrong approach of Afghanistan government. They are for the money, they are getting involved into the terrorism, spreading terrorism, not only to Pakistan. There are more than 25, 26 proscribed organizations in Afghanistan, out of which 15, 16 are directly confronting Pakistan. They are against Pakistan. However, there are many who are spreading terrorism, extremism to China, Russia, Central Asia, and even there was some individual who was caught in recent past in United States of America who was connected with these Taliban and this regime for the terrorism. So again, it is becoming a hub of, terrorists, and this will become a big problem for the international community. We need to understand we have to get out of the past. If Pakistan is, these people were with Pakistan, entire international community was with them. United States of America has used them as policy tool against the Russians. Now this place may be used against the Chinese also. And who will be supporting them? We are very much clear, but probably we have to restrain from such things. We have to take care of we have to craft our strategy, a collective approach, collective international, collective regional approach to bring peace, stability in Afghanistan, so people of Afghanistan stop suffering, state of Pakistan stop suffering. We have sacrificed the most after the Afghanistan for the international peace, for the regional peace.
Absolutely. Najib, I want your perspective on that, because I want to know whether the international community, in the larger sense, including the US, also understands the need for a stable Afghanistan. We say that, of course, in terms of regional peace, in terms of how it's an important aspect in the region and beyond to have a peaceful and stable Afghanistan. But a lot of that is just rhetoric, and a lot of that doesn't really point towards whether it's actually concerning for the international community as to what is going on, or whether this poses a potential international threat to the community. Do you think that that is the understanding? And if it is, what really then is the way forward in terms of understanding that Afghanistan needs to be peaceful and stable?
And by the way, could you also speak to the possibility of any international leverage that might be there? Of course, discount Pakistan and the UN, because UN doesn't have the kind of teeth. Pakistan, of course, we have identified how many problems there are. Are there other actors, for example, China, for example, Iran, other countries that might be able to exert some influence and then get some kind of concession for women?
Well, excuse me. Honestly speaking, like the issues in Afghanistan, or stability in Afghanistan, is not only stability in Afghanistan, but it's stability in the region. And this stability in Afghanistan is the stability in the region. We need to talk factually. We need to talk based on the researches, based on the evidence, based on what happened, what is going on. I mean, deny all the facts. Well, General Massoud has the right to deny. But his last statement rejected his first statements that Pakistan sacrificed, and then at the end he said that Pakistan, with the help of international community or with an ally to the United States, did what is the result today in Afghanistan. At the end of the day, when we talk about factual events, we are getting closer to the solutions. Like I said before, the ideologies we do, and this is not something I, as an Afghan, blame, or it is not something that the international community blames. Najib, it is something that I'm coming to your answer.
Yeah, Najib, I just have a counter question to it. Do you agree with me when I say that Hillary Clinton was the very person who actually said that we were the ones who left Pakistan and who left ISI with all of these Talibans and all of these Stinger missiles, and we left everyone, we just said we have nothing to do with it, you deal with it?
I am not only agree with this, but also with what Charlie Wilson said in his book. You know, the war, the Cold War, the war that they fought against the Soviet Union from Pakistan, by the help of Pakistan, by the help of ISI. This is what he said, and I also agree with what Clinton said. I'm trying to connect the dots. The dots are, well, the madrasas, it is not something I blame. It is something that you can read in Ahmad Rashid's book, Pakistan on the Brink. This is something you can read in Charlie Wilson's book. This is something you can read the former Pakistani ISI DGI Durrani, or you can read that, or you can watch the interview that Hamid Gul confessed, and you can also watch or read the book written by the former Pakistani president and Chief of Army Staff General Musharraf. These are the facts, and the facts are that the ideology was constantly injected for decades. You cannot pull out an ideology in a day or two. The Taliban we are witnessing today, who are in their leadership, are over 50. They are 50 plus. They are 6 years old, and those ideologies were injected into at least for 3 decades. How do you expect to pull out the ideology and you expect them to practice liberalism or freedom or democracy? It's not the case of interpretation of religion or Islam. Sana is a woman. This is not debatable. We cannot debate or interpret that Miss Sana is a woman. Islam is completely a different thing than what is being practiced in the international community. Of course, there was a war between 2 ideologies, capitalism and then socialism, and then some proxy forces were needed, which were, of course, funded, backed by the United States. It was the most expensive CIA's operation of that time, the Cold War, but this was implemented by the Pakistani army and the ISI in the region. And this is not something I blame. This is something the Pakistani leadership, the Pakistani former leadership, the Pakistani establishment leadership, retired generals read the books. So getting into the solution, Go and watch the documentary that is made in the Akora Madrasa. This is not something I blame. That is still available on the internet by BBC, by Pakistani journalists, and there are facts that Pakistan is still, that's their own interest for against the Indian and Kashmir or whatever. They have been training these proxy leadership, by the proxy forces. But at the end of the day, now those proxy forces we are witnessing even threatening Pakistan. Aren't we witnessing that? Aren't those? Yes, go ahead.
Najib, there is one point where I was confused when right after the Taliban took over Kabul, there was a footage of CNN in which one of the Taliban who was around 21, 22 years ago, and I'm talking about 2020 when they were entering in, and he was speaking fluent English, and the reporter asked him, where did you learn this language from? And then he goes, I have been studying at American University, Kabul. Then now where should I be looking towards? Who is to be blamed?
Well, you can, like individuals, al-Zawahiri, he studied in the United States. Osama, he was a highly educated person, Afia Siddiqui was an educated person. She studied medicine here in the United States.
I'm saying Pakistan has nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with Taliban and Afghans.
Oh, he is not blaming Pakistan.
Yes.
By the way.
The leadership. You were Interior Minister Sheikh Rashid. That video is on the internet right now, in an exclusive interview. Who was an Interior Minister? He said in an exclusive interview that Taliban are our heroes. They live here in Pakistan. They are hosted by Pakistan. Their dead bodies are brought to Pakistan. Their injured are treated in Pakistani hospitals. This is what your minister said. Your prime minister of those days, Imran Khan.
To take some time and also ask General Zahid to be part of the discussion and add something to it.
General Zahid.
That's a trick now. So we're not talking about an individual who went to an American university in Afghanistan or an American university in the United States or to a Pakistani university. We're talking about a group of people, a class of people called the proxy forces or the terrorists on the either side. They were trained, and this is not something I blame. This is something your leaders, your former leaders, your journalists, you go in and read what Hamid Mir says. He went to those places. He interviewed many Taliban leadership. And this is something the Pakistani journalists, the Pakistani authors, writers, generals, brigadiers, and politicians say. This is not something.
And Najib, I want a perspective from one such man as well who's part of the show today. General Zahid, can you also please comment on this? And I'm sure you have a lot to add to the discussion.
With all my respect to my friend and brother, I can understand that we are talking of the past, and at that time, America needed.
But that
Pakistan.
has an impact right now. The past has impact the present.
Let's hear him out. Let's hear him out, Najib. Let's hear him out.
You see, you're talking about the ideology. So this is not a Muslim ideology, to be very honest. They have nothing to do with Islam. We have madrasas here. Had that been the policy, or that has impacted the society, that had impacted Pakistan as well. Our women we have a prime minister here, women, you can see what is happening in Pakistan. So this is the misuse. Today, the way they are being paid by the Indians to perpetrate this terrorism against Pakistan, if they are paying $1, if we start paying them $1.5, they'll start doing it in India or somewhere else in any part of the world. What I am saying is that it is collective failure of the international community. You can't blame Pakistan. Our biggest bad luck is that we are their neighbors. Had Afghanistan been in the neighborhood of United States, I would have seen what would have been their condition. What is happening on the borders and immigrants, you can understand that. What I want to say is that this was the policy adopted and taken care of by America. All this ideology and ISI creation of this controlled chaos in this part of the world, people blame United States of America that this is a controlled chaos. What is happening in Middle East, what is happening in this part of the world. But you see, blaming each other will not bring us to a solution.
Right, absolutely.
This
Thank
will
you
not
very much, General Zahid, for being part of the discussion. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Thank you very much, Najib, Azad, for being part of the discussion as well. And Farrukh, I'll let you to the
Yeah,
concluding remarks. Yes, you wanted to add something.
while we were actually debating all this, I was reminded of Mushtaq Yousfi's quote that Asian drama, the worst villain of Asian drama is past. We keep on, whenever we talk about the future, we end up talking about the past. And that is the concern that I have. I understand what Najib was saying. Remember that this country has put together a national action plan against terrorism and extremism. And recently the federal cabinet has also greenlit an anti-extremism authority. So these things actually show that there are elements who have caused problem for Pakistan as well. And they have been killing people, or they are extremists. So we have to fight that ideology as well. My concern again is that while we can keep on talking about who did what and keep on playing this game, in the end what needs to be done is to find a lever to ensure that Afghan Taliban respect human rights, particularly women's rights. There isn't a single home in this country where you don't have daughters, where you don't have sisters, mothers. So we all are aware of the violation of those rights, and it is important those rights should not be violated. If they are being violated, what exactly should we do? Sanctioning Afghanistan only hurts the common man on the street. What else can you do? Can you use any kind of drones to put pressure? Can you actually send emissaries to put pressure on Afghan Taliban? Is there a possibility that whatever way the economy is running, there is some way to tighten screws on Afghan Taliban so that they realize that their own survival depends on this? Or can there be a regime change in Afghanistan? These are important questions that we need to answer right now. Can we debate what happened yesterday, last night? I don't think we have the luxury of that, because human beings are suffering. Women are suffering. I understand that this country's own problems have been immense. And remember that when Afghan Taliban were taking over at that time, I was sitting in the studio interviewing a couple of people, and one guest was smirking and asking me, why are these people trying to run away, those who were actually falling from the planes? And I asked him, won't you, if you fear for your life? And then that person ended up becoming our caretaker prime minister. So there are concerns. We agree. We have to correct that. But what to do with Afghan Taliban? If you want to talk about Pakistan, keep on talking about Pakistan. But it is important that we think and worry about our daughters who are living in Afghanistan, who are suffering, who are being denied the very basic rights.
Absolutely, and that is of course something that we should all be aware of and raise our voices for, and we hope that that changes for the better. We're now going to take a look at our next segment that takes a look at the world of sports, where we've seen this deadlock arise once again between the PCB and the BCCI. And Faisal, I want your perspective on this first. We've talked about this before as well, but in terms of a proposal that made sense to both parties, it seems that the response is not coming in from the Indian side, perhaps as expected. But in terms of where we stand as far as the Champions Trophy and all other ICC events goes, the fact that even there was a meeting that wasn't attended is something very concerning as to how this international body is going to take a look at it. And I want your perspective on that in terms of how fair this body is, and how moving forward this particular proposal as part of the partnership formula presented by the PCP will be undertaken.
Yes, and obviously when we talk about whatever the steps gradually BCCI was taking with its influence in the ICC, it was apparent that they want to alienate Pakistan's cricket, PCB, they wanted to alienate it, and that is why they came up with the idea of big three, in which of course we saw that all of the mega events, they wanted them to be held. Of course, the World Cups, they wanted them to be held in big threes, and they were the ones who wanted to secure, maximum of the, revenues from the cricket as a sport. But here I wanted to say, Sana, now when we have the keys of ICC in the hands of Jai Shah, it reminds me of, of a phrase which says that you give a matchbox to a monkey and he will burn down the jungle. This is what I'm expecting now, because they are going to use ICC as a platform to, of course, victimize Pakistan in coming future. And right now as well, they are going to start with the Champions Trophy. They are not sending their team. And at the same time, when Pakistan was proposed with the hybrid model, in which if Pakistan is not hosting India and India doesn't want to come to Pakistan to play, then of course Pakistan in future for the mega events would take the hybrid route, in which of course Pakistan would have its own matches elsewhere but not in India. And now of course the kind of notion which is coming from Jai Shah, which is coming from the Indian side, as always they have been politicizing all of the sports. They have been politicizing each and everything that has a little meaning as well. They have been politicizing it, and as long as it serves the purpose of going against Pakistan, they do it. They are doing it with cricket as well. And now of course today the meeting was supposed to be held in UAE of ICC, in which Pakistan's PCB's chairman and Interior Minister, he went there to attend it. But when it came to Jai Shah said he is not coming, though it was a sort of welcome for Jai Shah as well, because he has become ICC's chairman and he did not appear. And at the same time, now we are hearing from the Indian side that they are simply not playing in Pakistan, but whenever there is a mega event, they will not allow Pakistan to choose the hybrid model. And this is something like they want to be the hegemonic power of cricket. And the in old times we used to hear about the Ashes and the phenomenon of Ashes between Aussies and British and the English team. They always used to play for the Ashes. Now is the time that the whole cricket world would seem like Ashes. The whole ICC body would seem like Ashes. And to me, in future, the mega events in the streets and in the small grounds, people or kids who wanted to play cricket, rather than having a body like this, that is a body going to be a body that is going to push hate towards Pakistan, with the Jai Shah being its chairperson and the holding force ICC's chairman. To me, I feel like cricket is going to turn itself into ashes, and that needs to be saved. If world is cautious enough about saving cricket, this is the time that they have to do something.
Right.
And they should not be giving the reins of cricket in hands of a monkey.
Right. Farrukh, I want your perspective on that in terms of whether that is possible or not, because while we talk about politicization of sports in terms of India and Pakistan, there's also politics and politicization in international bodies and within the ICCI also perhaps. So when we have that sort of a situation, then how can we expect to remove that from the equation?
Right, Sana. Actually, I'm not going to call any human being monkey, but I'm going to actually recite a verse from Habib Jalib, and that says, तुमसे पहले वो जो यहाँ एक शख्स तख्त नशीन था, उसको भी खुदा होने का इतना यकीन था, right? Before you, whosoever was sitting on this throne also was equally convinced of being God. So there's, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
India is a rich country now, so they know how to abuse that privilege, and they are doing exactly that. And just to build context and link whatever I'm going to say to what I actually recited earlier, cricket was invented by the British. There was a time when their empire never ended, and the sun never actually went down on the empire. But now you have seen that the country is a very different place. So India should learn from other colonialists and other power-hungry countries, because this is what happens in the end. Now regarding this overall situation, I think that there doesn't seem to be any lever to correct whatever is happening there either. today's two topics, I'm afraid that I don't see any kind of correction possible in the system.
Yeah.
So India will continue to do whatever it is doing for now. Eventually, somebody will realize that we have actually made a head of ICC who does not have a brain. So there will be some way to find a brain for him or somehow replace him. Pakistan can of course go to other countries and try to lobby ICC, but in the end it is India which is calling shots at ICC because India is such a big market, because so much revenue is generated for ICC by India, and that is not all. India's market is so big that it influences American cricket also, other countries as well. So I'm afraid that while Pakistan can take a knee, Pakistan can actually protest, but there isn't any way to actually correct this for now. Perhaps there can be some legal battle, perhaps there can be some kind of lobbying effort that we can go for, but I don't see any other correction.
Yes, Anna,
Yes.
just a one-liner, and that is my apologies to all of the monkeys in the world.
Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate today. That's all that we have time for. We'll now see you tomorrow.